Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Wherever you are on this beautiful planet of ours, welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear. This is the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable carbon neutral society, and I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thank you for joining the conversation. The impact of reusable food service containers cannot be overstated. Single-use plastics, particularly in food service, contribute significantly to global plastic pollution. In the United States alone, the market for disposable food service containers is vast, with sales reaching approximately $27.8 billion annually. The extensive use of disposables not only adds to the billions of pounds of waste generated each year, it exacerbates the environmental impact of our society through the production, disposal, and potential for pollution from these single-use items. Our guest is Alison-Cove. She's CEO of USEFULL. She recently contributed an article to Earth911 called Designing a Circular Campus Food Service System. And Alison's work is at the forefront of a critical shift in how we approach food service sustainability, particularly in reducing our reliance on single-use plastics and single-use paper products through the adoption of tech-enabled reusable containers. By implementing collection systems for reusable food packaging, institutions like universities and corporate cafeterias can drastically reduce their environmental impact. For instance, Carleton College, which adopted USEFULL's reusable system, saw a drop in their loss rate from almost 60% to less than 1% of the materials that they distributed to people who were eating in the cafeteria. This achievement is part of a broader movement toward creating circular food service systems on campuses, which not only cut down on waste, but foster a culture of sustainability that extends beyond the campus. In other words, when we teach people to recycle on campus or reuse on campus, that practice will follow them throughout their lives. Moving to reuse also represents a significant step in addressing the broader issue of plastic pollution and demonstrates how innovation in the food service industry can lead to meaningful environmental benefits. You can learn more about USEFULL, which is spelled USEFULL, at usefull.us. Let's take a quick commercial break and then we'll talk with Alison. Welcome to the show, Alison. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Mitch?
Doing well, doing well. Thank you for joining us. What was the inspiration? What drove the idea for creating a tech-enabled reusable food service business?
I started USEFULL really to solve a personal dilemma. I consider myself an environmentalist, and at home I have cabinets full of reusable packaging. But at the time I was working in downtown Boston in management consulting, and I was ordering takeout all day, every day. And while I consider myself an environmentalist, my takeout habits weren't matching that. Trash was literally piling up at my desk. So I wanted a reusable solution for my favorite cafes in Boston. And in 2018, I ran my first pilot at the cafe downstairs from my office, on the first floor. And the hypothesis that I was testing was, are people even comfortable with this idea of what, at the time, what I was calling the shared economy? Reusing a cup that someone else had held before. We're comfortable with it at restaurants, but in a takeout manner, are we comfortable? And so the feedback I got was, this is awesome, but I hate the cups you're using.
So what did they hate about the cups?
So the cups that I was using at the time were made of bamboo. I was very early on in this journey, and I just had been, sold that bamboo was sustainable. What I later learned is bamboo is fiber that needs to be held together with resin. And the resin that is used often with these products is not so great. So one of the key ingredients in the resin of the cups that I initially used was formaldehyde. If that resin hadn't finished off gassing, I was essentially putting formaldehyde into everyone's coffee, which was not a big hit.
I can see why people might not have liked that. So you've switched to steel.
Yes.
Tell me about what's the typical day in the life of a USEFULL container from checkout to return?
Sure. So our reusable containers are stored clean behind the counter where single use traditionally has been. And so you order as you normally would, whether in person or online or at a kiosk. You're served in a reusable container. Each container has a unique QR code on the bottom. It's then checked out to you, essentially like a library book, and you can hold on to it for generally 1 to 7 to 10 days, depending on what your campus or community has decided.
Just to walk through this, I have my container from my previous purchase. When I walk in, do I hand it to them and they fill it generally, or do we
No.
replace what I have with a new one?
So you return dirty things to a return station. You scan it and drop it in the bin. It's then taken into the dish room where it's cleaned in a commercial kitchen, similar to anywhere you eat on campus or at a restaurant. You're always served starting with a clean container, and that is really important to us to ensure that there's food safety standards always upheld. So no, you cannot bring something previously used and hand it over the counter, always starting clean from behind the counter.
You scan it like a self-checkout at a grocery store, perhaps?
Yeah, that's one way we do it. So yes, we do have a useful app, and users download it. And for college students, they sign in with their college credentials. We have the integrations with all the campus providers, campus card providers. Then one of the options is to do a self-checkout where you scan it and it's checked out to you, and that begins the clock of how long you can hold on to it. There are a few other use cases depending on how the campus has rolled out the implementation, where it's maybe scanned by the cashier or by the
Okay.
person serving you.
So it's a flexible platform. You can configure it in various ways as necessary.
Exactly.
How long do people generally keep stuff? I'm curious. And from the institution's perspective, what percentage of my inventory is generally in circulation?
We nerd out on this.
Okay.
And we do a lot of assessments of, we want to have the most efficient system out there. So we want to deploy a campus just the right amount of inventory, not too much, not too little. What I really find fascinating is some campuses with, say, 5-day free usage periods, folks hold on to it for a very little amount of time. So
Mhm.
one campus that I'm thinking of specifically, they're in entirely retail operations, and on average, students are holding onto those containers for 10 hours and 10 hours only. Another campus that's a little bit more residential, folks are holding on. They similarly have a 5-day free usage period, and students are holding on to it for about 32 hours before returning it.
You've got it down to the hour. That's interesting.
Oh, yes. Another thing that I like to nerd out on is the seasonality of it. So,
Oh,
when the snow starts falling, do people hold on to things for longer? Does takeout drop or increase? It's all super interesting.
so what's peak reuse season then?
So I actually think peak reuse season is when the weather is nice. When what I imagine is that students are going out to the green and sitting with their friends and enjoying their lunch on the green.
How does the environmental impact of a reusable steel container compare to that of traditional single-use plastic or paper? Have you nerded out on that?
Absolutely. So we have a real-time impact dashboard available for each of our schools, so they can see in real time how much waste tonnage has been mitigated, CO2 and water. So reuse is best when it's reused and reused a lot. So stainless steel and our containers are net positive to the environment after about 25 uses. And
25.
we're able to achieve that within about a month and a half of a deployment on campus. So it's a pretty quick net positive to the environment. Not to mention, we as an organization firmly believe that you can't solve plastic with more plastic,
Yeah.
which is to say there's no plastic in any of our containers. And that is in part because of the environmental concerns, but I guess more selfishly, I don't want to be ingesting plastic into my body, whether it's petroleum-based plastic or bioplastics. That's all going into us, and the more and more research is coming out about just how terrible it is for us to be ingesting that.
You've got the cup. Do you have food takeout containers? Can you describe the design of a steel food takeout container?
Sure. So we have a whole bunch of different styles. We have bowls. We also have rectangular containers. Most of our packaging is actually double wall vacuum insulated, so it holds temperature for 5 or more hours, and there's no heat transfer. So what's on the inside doesn't scald your hands,
Right.
in other words. We do have some single walled options as well for things that are stored in the fridge, but by and large, our partners are using the insulated option. And so it's really a premium takeout experience, right? Your food is staying warm for hours as opposed to cold the moment you leave the restaurant.
You talked about the reporting that you do in terms of emissions and so forth. What are the institutions looking for in that data, and how are they using that data to either demonstrate their sustainability or to lower their costs?
Sure. On the TVs throughout campus, they're able to project their real-time impact of switching to reusable packaging. So that's a, kind of in your face, wow, we're collectively making an impact. But then, they have annual sustainability reports, which probably no one reads, but they have the data is accessible to them. In terms of cost savings, that's something that's not on the dashboard, but a huge thing for the dining directors to focus in on. It's a huge cost savings to switch to reusables, but especially if they're using biodegradable packaging, that's super expensive.
So roughly how much, and I know this isn't a dollar figure, but percentage-wise, how much can an organization save over the course of a year by switching from single use to a reusable container?
Sure. So it can either be cost neutral, or we've seen up to 35% cost savings by switching to our program.
So roughly how many containers have you got in circulation right now?
Oh, that's a great question. That's not something I know, but it's tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. Okay.
Mhm.
What's involved in changing the processes within a cafeteria when you decide to introduce reusable packaging in terms of training and just the flow of the work?
So we always come on site and do in-person training, and that's really been a key to our success because the folks working behind the line are the ones interacting with it most closely. But in reality, it's a very easy transition. It's not rocket science. And in part because of our technical integrations, it makes it a lot more straightforward for the cashier or the person preparing the meal. That said, our stainless steel containers do take up a little bit more space than single-use packaging. It does have to come from the dish room. So there is a bit more nuance, but on the flip side, in one of our locations, they no longer had trash to take out because there was no more trash. So a switch in operations is real, and I know change can be hard for a lot of folks and organizations, but it's a pretty seamless change.
And how did the students and the employees in these cafeteria settings, and not the workers, but the people who visit, how do
Right.
and what kind of feedback do you hear from them?
Sure. So one of our key differentiators is that we ask our partner campuses to essentially go all in with us in a phased manner, but essentially get rid of single-use packaging throughout campus so that reusable packaging becomes the default and the cultural norm on campus. And that is really important to changing behavior and driving that impact that we were just talking about. It also means we have dedicated campus partners, really truly dedicated to this cause. So with that said, I have been to a few launches recently, and I love just kind of being a fly on the wall to hear what students say. And I was recently out in Arizona, and I overheard a student talking to one of their friends, waiting in line to order their lunch, say, "This is rad." Just really excited to be able to walk the talk, and tangibly take part in the sustainability efforts of the campus.
So do you do educational material? Is there collateral around the campus that says this is going on and these are the benefits?
Absolutely. So ahead of the launch, we do some marketing with the campuses. During the launch, we generally have team members on site to help educate students. But it's a pretty easy transition. Students really get it. They are attuned to the concerns of plastic, the concerns of waste, and of course, environmental sustainability is generally on the forefront of their minds.
Now you mentioned you have an app. Can I essentially socialize my savings and my reduction? Can I share that? And is that an element of your marketing strategy to get people to virally explain useful to one another?
So yes, you do have access to your own impact data, which you can share with folks. Another feature is that each cup has a unique name, and they're very funny names. And so folks like to share that too with their friends. But we're definitely trying to get people more into sharing their impact and sharing their fun container names.
It occurs to me with that kind of an app, you would actually know when you got the same cup again, wouldn't you?
Yes, you would.
Do people pay attention to that kind of thing?
I haven't heard of anyone paying attention to that yet, but
You could actually gamify that.
we should. We should. We do have golden containers. So every once in a while, we determine a handful and we say you can just keep it. This is now your container. which is kind of fun. And we also congratulate people when they hit certain milestones of number of checkouts and associated impact. But there definitely are more opportunities to gamify and work with our college partners to make that happen.
Certainly see a path to a widespread adoption in that tale that you just shared. I want to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back to continue this fascinating conversation. Now let's return to the conversation with Alison Cove. She's CEO and founder of reusable takeout container and collection system developer, USEFULL. And by the way, that's useful with 2 L's. So Alison, starting the company, what challenges did you face first in conveying the importance of doing this to a cafeteria management company? And then in terms of just standing up the business and getting these steel containers made in sufficient quantity to launch a business?
Yes. So as I mentioned, my first pilot was 2018, and then the first college to launch with us was 2021. And I'm sure everyone listening remembers what happened in between there. There was a big pandemic and life changed.
Seems like people had a cough.
A big cough, maybe a slight fever. So anyway, I guess there was a bit of a silver lining. I had to totally shut down the project in Boston, going cafe to cafe, and pivot to focus on higher education. And the reason that I pivoted to higher education at the time was because no one really understood what was going on at the community level. Each cafe owner was a little nervous and this, that, and the other. It was hard to get staff. But college campuses had a real need to serve all of their students, and they needed their students to be on campus, but everything had to be served in takeout packaging. So waste was just piling up. It was super expensive for these colleges. So the first college that I actually partnered with is my alma mater. And I thought, okay, once I have one campus, it's going to be so easy just to scale this thing and no big deal. But what I really realized was that this could be, first of all, those dining directors were under extreme pressure and stress during COVID and figuring out how to serve all these students and keep their staff safe and all the rest of it. And so introducing a program like this could be a career maker or ender, depending on how it went. So I really had to instill in our future partners that you can trust me, you can trust the business that I'm building, you can trust the technology that we've developed, the containers, all of it. I'm going to help you make the best decision of your career.
In order to do that, did you need to show them the kinds of metrics that you were going to be able to provide and then translate those metrics into the actual impacts that they could share, not just with their management, but with the constituency that they were serving in the cafeteria?
Absolutely. And what I actually found for a number of our first campuses was that they actually wanted to take this before student government to get their buy-in before making a decision, which was fascinating for me to see. When I was a student, I didn't think student government had any actual pull. I thought it was just figureheads and what have you. It's been really fun to see how the students are the clients. It is important to get their feedback and make sure that they are bought into whatever decisions are being made on the campus.
How does that translate into the business environment? When you walk into a corporate cafeteria, and I've worked on major campuses where there's a cafeteria in every other building, that's a massive decision in terms of a switchover. Does business have a different set of criteria?
Yeah, slightly different, but very similar, I'd say. On a corporate campus, they're more focused on employee satisfaction and retention and things like that. Their decision-making process in some ways seems to be longer to me than college campuses. And I don't know the real reason behind that. I'm assuming on the college level, some of it has to do with the general seasonality. School starts every fall and things march on. And so there's a real a cadence to it. I think the other thing is these schools are all really competitive with one another. There are sustainability awards that they're all competing for. And, there's the Green Restaurant Association and the ASHI Stars. And so I think they're all really attuned to those competitions and want to, be a flagship organization.
So in terms of accelerating the adoption of this, particularly by college campuses, have you looked at other sources of funding to help subsidize the introduction of this, foundation backing or other forms of philanthropy that would help us a college, particularly a college, a smaller organization, make the shift to reusability?
What we have done is we've tried to make it as easy as possible to facilitate that transition. And one of the key things that we do is we actually lease our containers to folks so that day one they can start saving money in comparison to single-use packaging. So we're able to tap into their operations budget, and the money that they would have been spending on single-use packaging, they can that month direct it towards us instead, and generally at a cost savings. We found it, there's some grant money out there and what have you, but we actually found this the best way to help campuses move things along
It's
fast.
a business decision then.
Exactly.
You're also beginning to augment the platform with interaction or integrations with other organizations like Transact and Seaboard, which are student card management companies and systems. How is that integrated now? Do I get a useful number when I get my student identity card? How does this all work, and how does it begin to change the user experience when it's integrated with how I pay for dinner as well?
Sure. So it's a single sign-on for the students. So they still download our app, but it's the same sign-on that they would use for their campus card. They're now using that to get into the useful platform. They can also pay for any late or lost fees that they might get, though generally only 4% of students ever get a late or lost fee. So it's pretty small. And then the further integrations, and this varies a bit by platform, but some integrations for order ahead.
Okay, so you also are taking responsibility for the container when, as a student in this case, you take it away. And if I did lose it, roughly what am I going to be charged? And I assume that goes on my student account.
Goes on your student account. And so going back to the example I gave earlier, campus with a 5-day free usage period. After the 5th day, so day 6, I'm charged $1 if I haven't returned it. And then for a few weeks, I'm charged $1 a day. And then after, I think it's 2 weeks, we sum the late and lost fees, and it's $25 for a container and $17 for a book cup.
Okay, and so you said 4% of students ever get a late fee. Is 4% the breakage rate in the system, or is that subsidized in some way?
You mean like containers getting damaged and needing to
Yeah,
be set aside?
yeah.
So these
Or
things are
lost, or lost.
or lost. So less than 1% of all containers have ever been lost.
Okay.
So this fair and friendly stick really does seem to get containers back into circulation, which is fantastic. We don't want to be in the business of replacing containers. The whole idea is to get as many uses as we can out of these containers for environmental sustainability. That said, if you run it over with an 18-wheeler, yes, it will be damaged, and we do need to set it aside. Though our containers are really durable, and so it's a very low damage rate.
Are the containers branded in any way? Like, in the sense that they might even be collectible at some point?
Ooh, I hope they're not collectible at some
Well, in
point.
a sense,
It
in this
defeats the
sense,
purpose.
if I go to a college that has my logo,
Yeah.
alma mater's logo, that actually becomes a thing I might pay the $25 to keep.
Right. So the stainless steel is branded with our logo, and then the lids we have a standard lid, which is our logo, our brand color. Some campuses do decide to do custom lids, which is their color, their logo on the lid. So it is an option. We don't want people stealing these, but I suppose if we're on your campus, you can.
Well, you would reuse it in a different context.
Exactly.
That's interesting. So as you think about how you can integrate more deeply into these environments, which are increasingly networked, increasingly measured, what other capabilities can useful integrate into the student or the employee experience of interacting with a cafeteria as a source of food and enjoyment?
Right. So we're really focusing in on how everything out of the cafeteria or retail setting can be served in reusable packaging, and how to make the return process as easy as possible on these college campuses, as well as how to order and continue to track containers. So it seems like we're doing integrations left, right, and center to help streamline that experience for our students as well as the staff working in these locations.
Do you find that those habits begin to translate into other forms of sustainable thinking and living around the campus? Have you heard reports that, once they started to embrace reusable food service packaging, they wanted this? And what might that be?
I think we're really on the precipice of that. I've heard a lot about food waste, and making sure that all things attached to food is really sustainable. But one of the things that I'm most excited about is that working with these college students, we're essentially reframing what takeout food looks like. We're
Yeah.
changing the paradigm of what takeout looks like. And that's really exciting to start thinking about how these students can start to bring that to the communities that they decide to move to or live in, and how we can start to really affect change at a much broader level.
A lot of takeout food is criticized for being highly processed. Is one of the things you might be able to do in the future is track what I've consumed, because you're tracking the packaging and potentially integrating with what's served into the packaging?
So today, that is not something that we have, but who knows what the future holds.
So how do you get to the future? What's your business strategy to grow from where you are today?
Sure. So we're really focused on growing in higher education. It really seems to be a good market fit for us and the technology and products that we've built. We're continuing to build partnerships with ecosystem partners to help bring useful to college campuses throughout the U.S. As it is today, we do have campuses coast to coast, a big Midwest presence, and we're continuing to spread our wings north to south.
Do you need to raise funding in order to do that, or is this self-funding and as you grow?
So we have raised some funding. We do have some great partners who have helped us start to scale and build the team and continue to serve our partners in greater ways than we have.
Are you planning another round of funding? Just some of our listeners are interested in that kind of thing.
I'm always open to conversations about it. We are not actively fundraising right now, but I guess as a founder, I'm always fundraising, right?
Well, so how can our listeners follow your progress, and if they're at a college, potentially make the connection to their cafeteria program manager so that they can get useful?
Sure. So I always recommend LinkedIn. I post a ton on LinkedIn, both educating folks on reuse and various materials. So my name,
How we connected?
exactly. So my name is Alison Cove, Allison with one L, and then Useful is our company name, and Useful has two L's. We do a lot of posting on LinkedIn as well as our website, which is useful.us.
So what's your advice if you're going to a cafeteria tomorrow about how to tell them to start thinking about reuse? What's that message that somebody listening should convey to get that conversation started?
Yeah, the dining directors or auxiliary directors are the people to chat with about that. And it's all about elevating the experience on the campus, fulfilling the sustainability missions that are generally at these campuses, and giving the students the ability to walk the talk. So I'd say that on the whole, these dining directors and auxiliary services directors really do appreciate student feedback and ideas, and there's some follow through.
Well, it's really encouraging to see Useful translating the talk into the ability to walk this path. So thank you, Allison, for the time you spent with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Really fun conversation.
That was my conversation with Alison Cove, founder and CEO of Useful, Useful spelled with two L's. And Useful has developed reusable takeout containers and collection solutions for college and corporate cafeterias. You can learn more about the company at Useful, again, with two L's, useful.us. Allison's comment about walking the talk, turning intention into action, describes the great challenge for the sustainability movement. The world can see the impact of the industrial era in climate change, the increased frequency of drought and extreme weather, the loss of biodiversity, and the addition of smoke season to the annual calendar. But we humans don't often translate the anxiety we feel about the environment into action. And as you heard, we don't always get the right information. Allison was told that bamboo containers were safe and healthy early in her journey to launch Useful, but in fact, they contained materials which were bad for the user and that leached into food and drink over the course of time. But creating A tracking system and accountability for the disposition of takeout containers provides the concrete metrics that a business or university can use to change its cost structure and explain the environmental benefits of its action to customers, management, and other constituents. And by extending that reporting capability to support social sharing of personal environmental progress, Useful broadcasts its impact as well as reinforces the value it provides to the individual diner. So, proof points like that can help translate people's concerns into action to help them walk the talk that spreads sustainable examples throughout society. And of course, colleges are a place where people embrace lifelong habits, and that's a perfect place to kick this process off. If you frequent a cafeteria, take a moment to share your desire for usable containers with the dining manager. It might start your takeout transformation. Here's another change that you can share. Would you take a moment to share this podcast or any of the more than 490 interviews that we've produced on sustainability in your ear? Folks, by writing a review on your favorite podcast platform, you help our neighbors find us. You are the amplifier that can spread more ideas to create less waste. So please tell your friends, family, and coworkers that they can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any fine purveyor of podcast goodness that they prefer. Thanks, folks, for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Sustainability in Your Ear, and we'll be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.